I'm continuing with trying to install the connections, etc., for the transmission. And my plan was that I was going to, I had put these cooling lines on first, in spite of the fact that the instructions told you to put them on after you installed the transmission. I'm trying to get you a picture up in here of where you would have had to reach to, and I'm glad I put them on first because I'm not sure there's much access to that, because this pan comes very close to the I guess that's the footwell on the passenger side of the body. And what my original plan was is, I'm having trouble holding the light and showing you at the same time, but let's see if I can get the light jammed in there so that I don't have to hold it. Let's try to turn the light on the camera. So my original plan was to run the cooling lines on that same, actually add another clamp to clamp it to the other side using the same bolt hole of that. It's the battery cable up in there. See if I can zoom in on it. See that clamp there? I was going to use the same bolt hole, face a clamp the other way, a larger clamp, and put both of the cooling lines in it. Turns out that's going to be impossible to reach. So my next thought was, this is the side rail frame, and when I first looked at it, I thought this is where I had planned to hook it to. This is the fuel line, and again putting a clamp through the same hole but facing in the other direction. But I'm not sure I can get that bolt out and get it back in. If I go up further, I can probably clamp it to that using that same method. Put another clamp over here with the loop here and put both of these through. However, because of the fact that they tell you to position these, I'm having trouble getting in. You position the, move that one out of the way. You position those outlets and inlets on the transmission towards the rear. It's going to put these cooling lines very close to the exhaust pipe, which this is the end of the header, if I just try to run them directly across. So what I've done already with one of the lines, and I can determine which line it is because I have different fittings on each of these. One's a 5/16, one's a 3/8. The 3/8 comes out of the cooler and back to the transmission. The 5/16 goes into the cooler in the radiator, which then comes out of the radiator and into the external transmission cooler. So what I did is I basically pulled the first line down out of here, and I'm going to show you as much of this as I can. Basically, I took the line out of there. I got the end of it, and I put the end of it from the back of the transmission. I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible by taking all the curl out of the line, because it has a tendency to curl where it was packaged all coiled up. So I'm basically going to try to run this pretty much next to the other line and just catch it, and I'm going to have to put the Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put the camera down, I believe. But I'm going to try to run it over that and just give me a little loop right there and head it towards the front. And then cross it over to where that fuel line is there, near that one. So I'm going to put the camera down and use two hands to do this, and then I'll show you what I've done. It just took me about a minute to do that. I ran it through the back, made that loop in it. There's two lines there, both have a loop, and then they run towards the front. What I'm going to do is right there, there's a hole in the, I guess that's the transmission case. No, it's the Bellhausen case, I think. At any rate, that hole there, I'm going to zip tie those lines so that they don't move and fall down on the exhaust. And then I'll come across, I can come across well above the exhaust pipe and hook them into a clamp that's right there. I don't have the clamps today, so that's not happening today, but the zip tie will, and I'll run these towards the front of the car and see how much of this return line I have, and what I need to do to connect it to the radiator and the transmission cooler. Okay, there's the zip tie. I've got it around both of those. I'm going to try to just yank it tight, I guess I'll need two hands to do that, so I won't be able to show you the whole thing. But only reason I'm showing you this is it was much easier to try to get that zip tie in from the top than from the bottom. So I basically put my hand over towards the engine part and was able to get behind those hoses and sneak the tip of the zip tie through the hole and then bend the part where the zip tie goes into itself down and hook it up. That was much easier than trying to go through the bottom because I couldn't catch the tip when I had the tip going up through the top. It was just getting lost up there. So I will do that and temporarily zip tie it over here to the fuel line so that while I'm working with it, I know that I've got it in pretty much the position I want to have it in while I'm working with it up front by the radiator. This is for demonstration purposes only, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another clamp. It has to be bigger than this, and bolt it under that same hole as the clamp that's holding the fuel line, and then put both of the transmission cooling lines in it. But for now, I'm just going to zip tie the cooling lines here so that I know they're in the position I need them to be, and I'm not pulling them too far towards the front as I'm working with them up there. So again, I'm going to just put the zip tie in. Pretty much like that. Oops. Except I'm going to need two hands to do it so that I can hold it. And put the two lines through it. Tie it off, then I'll be able to work up front. So there I've got the two cooling lines for the transmission temporarily zip tied where I'm going to put a clamp, and that will keep them high enough. This is a good 3 inches above the header. So with that, I can lower the car and go up front and work. I'm looking at the radiator connection that's supposed to go into the transmission cooler. And this is the piece they give you, and you're supposed to screw it in, place a hose up over it, and then it goes to the cooler. The problem I'm having here is there's about a 1/2 inch between it and the upper control arm. I don't think that will move a 1/2 inch, but at any rate, it would be in the way of trying to get a wrench on that to adjust the alignment, camber and caster. So what was originally on the car was this, which would be a much better solution because I can point it down that way, get it away from the alignment adjusting nuts, and point the hose more directly to the gap where I want to send the hose to the cooler. There's a little space there that the hose is going to go through. Probably can't get it on the video, but it's where that one goes in. Oops. You can't exactly see the opening, but there is one there where that air conditioning hose is going through the hard line. So I think I'm going to have to go with the original, which I think maybe the one I have in my hand is really from the bottom, not the top, inlet to the cooler. Well, the cooler that's built into the radiator. So the other thing I have to do is I have to compare the diameters of these things, because the fittings on the auxiliary cooler are 3/8 inch. The fittings that they gave you with the transmission are 5/16, and the hoses to the cooler they give you are 11/32, which is basically a 32nd between the two. Because 3/8 would be 6/16 or 12/32. 5/16 is 10/16, or what does that make it, 20/32? So 11/32 is a 32nd in between them. And I guess you're just supposed to force it over this end. And I guess that's possible because I got it on the 3/8 inch nipples on the cooler itself. So I'm going to set this camera up on a tripod and compare these two fittings I have in my hand. Okay, first thing, I did test fit this fitting, and it does screw into they're flared fittings, so no need for Teflon tape or anything like that. And this will give me a better angle. I can make a lazier curve because I can adjust this, which direction it points. I can make a lazier curve with the hose that goes to the cooler. So that's kind of a good thing. It's not too lazy a curve, but it's better than yeah, I can kind of point it in the direction of where it has to go through the front of the radiator mount. So I'm going to take this out. We're going to compare it to the one they gave us for diameter. There's the one they gave us with the transmission. This is the one I had from the original. Get these a little closer together. This fitting here is designed to slide either way. If you have a male fitting coming out of the radiator, use this end. If you need a male fitting going into the radiator, you use this end. So that's the end that would work on this DeWitt's radiator. So I'm going to zoom in on the end of those. And it's kind of hard to see because you're comparing two different ends. One's a flared end, which they're telling you just slip the hose over that. The other is, I don't know what it's called, but it's got a bump on it that you slip the hose over. They do look like in the end, the bump or the flare is about the same diameter. So I don't think it's going to make a difference as far as fitting the hose over it, although I know that the hose is going to be a tight fit because it was a tight fit when I used it on the cooler itself. I had to work to put that on there. So I am going to see, since I have nothing to lose, I'm not going to use this in the state it's in. I'm going to see if I can get my tubing bender and if I can put a bend in this, and maybe I'll be able to use it. So it'll be a newer piece. There's not much to work with here to try and make a bend because of the shortness of the tube and the fact that you already got a fitting on it. But I'm going to try it. I have nothing to lose because I'm not using this piece anyway. I can maybe see what I can do with it. So I was able to bend it a little bit. I do have another tubing bender, but I think it's for a 1/4 inch. So I don't think it's going to help me. I'm going to look for that. So the other bender was for 1/4 inch. This actually fit into it, but there was no way I was going to get enough leverage on it to bend it with this short of a piece of tube. So I guess I'm going to take this over to the car and just see if it's going to work, because I did get some clearance for me. I may or may not show it on video because there may be nothing to see. I installed the cooler according to the instructions, and what they said to do was put both ends of the hose they supplied onto the fittings on the cooler and then measure how far you had to go to get to the radiator and cut it and use the other end to match the line that goes to the transmission. So in order to aid myself in installing the thing, I made this little, I had a piece of 3/8 inch hose. So I just slipped it onto the end of the fitting I'm going to use, and I'm going to slip that through the hole in the radiator mount and see how long I need to have that that hose on the cooler and cut it, and then take this off of here and put the hose to the inlet on the cooler on this fitting. In the process of fitting that hose, I wanted to put the hood down to see if there was an alternative way of running the hose, and what I found was that the way I had this into the Sniper Quadrajet, I had the short threaded end into the Sniper, and I had way too much of this sticking up for me to feel comfortable closing the hood. So what I'm trying to do now, and I guess I should post this under the Sniper thing, is see how far this will screw in and whether that makes me comfortable with closing the hood once it's all the way in. In cleaning this up to see if it would fit on the Quadrajet, you can see right here these threads are a bit nicked up, and it would go in about that far, and then it started to give me some resistance. So I'm going to opt to get a new stud for that to hold the air cleaner on. Not going to risk stripping out the threads in the Quadrajet or the Sniper. It's actually called a Sniper Quadrajet. The instructions that come with this cooler say the average installation time is 30 minutes. I think I've spent a couple hours trying to figure out the best way to do this one connection here. And after having the car up in the air again to see if I could see a better way to put the hoses through, I couldn't find one. It looked like it could come over the top of the radiator, but then I remembered that there's an air scoop that is a plastic air scoop that goes there, and it probably would be in the way. It probably takes up the available space that I would have used to route the hose. I'm going to try, and I was trying a little bit before, and it was being difficult to line up this. This doesn't rotate quite the best because it's an old one, but I'm trying to run the hose through that hole in the radiator support, and it's a challenge because there's air conditioning hoses that go through there, so it's kind of limited space. The thing I'm a little worried about is I do have those loose yet because I haven't fully installed the air conditioner, and my concern is that I'll put this in and I'll have it installed and it's going to be in the way of the air conditioning hoses. This is not going to be easy to thread in here, and I don't want to cross thread it. That's the worst thing that could happen. So every time it gets pushed back a little bit onto the tubing, it sticks and I can't turn it. Unfortunately, pushing it in with the tubing is one of the easiest ways to get it started. So hard to get it lined up with that hose connected too, which leads me to another question I'm going to have is it going to be easier to put the hose on first and then thread it in, or is it going to be easier to thread it in and then put the hose in? Remembering that it's a 3/8 inch barb on the end of this, and the hose that comes with the cooler is 11/32. So do want to get this threaded in here so that when I'm pulling on that hose, I don't pull it out of position and I get an accurate measurement on where it's going to go. So that actually is pretty good there, and the bend in the hose is less than a 3-inch radius, so that is a good thing. So based on the fact that I was able to get this fitting started with the hose attached, that's how I'm going to approach it once I have the hose to the cooler cut. I'm going to put it on here and then thread the fitting in. So that's tight enough for now. Now I'm going to have to go underneath and try to measure how much of this I need. One thing they don't tell you in the instructions is on the cooler whether the inlet is on the bottom or the top. I don't know how much difference it would make, but it'd be nice if they'd tell you something like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bottom as the inlet and the out as the top as the outlet, because that's the way these are. The inlet to the radiator cooler is on the bottom and this is the outlet. So what you're doing is you're putting already partially cooled fluid into the extra cooler. So since that goes from the bottom to the top, that's the way I'm going to do it underneath. So the next thing I have to do is put the car up in the air and see if I can get an accurate measurement on that. And I think it might be a two-step process. I might have to measure how far that hose goes and mark it on the hose that's on the cooler, and then come up and take this off and measure from that point for the length of this hose, or so that I get the correct length of the thing. If I'd have known how much hassle this was going to be, I would have just bought me a length of 3/8 inch hose. It's not that expensive. You know, the companies worry about $1 extra on there because it affects their bottom line. For me, I'd rather pay that $1 extra and get something that's easy to do. Okay, what I've done here off camera is I've found the hose that I pushed through, which is right here, and I lined it up with the hose that goes to the bottom of the cooler, and I put a piece of tape on there, so that's how far the hose that I have attached to the radiator comes. Now what I'll do is I'll go up and I'll take this hose off, and starting from here, however long that hose is, I'll cut this, and that's the piece then that's going to go through the radiator mount to go to the radiator, the outlet from the radiator. Then what I'll do is whatever's remaining of this hose, I'll thread it through that same hole in the radiator mount, and I'll use that to connect the return hose to, which I already have the barb on that transmission cooling line that will go into this hose with some effort, because it's a 11/32 hose on a 3/8 inch fitting. So what we have here is the piece of hose I had through. It reached to this green tape, so I'm going to line it up with the hose coming out of the transmission cooler, and I hope you can see that end. Yeah, and that's where I'm going to cut it off. I hope that's right. So, now I need to put both of these hoses through to the engine compartment so I can hook up the hoses there. What I'm going to do is the one that I cut that came from the upper outlet of the radiator and putting this piece of tape back on it, so that when I shove it through, I'll know which one is the one that I want to connect to that top. There's no good place to hook a magnetic light on these fiberglass body cars. So we're gonna shove that through there. And I hope that nothing's in the way when I start to put the front end back on this, because I have no way of telling if there's anything going to impact this. If there is, it's going to be back to the drawing board. So I think both of them are through. I think they're out of the way of everything. I know that there's a support that goes through here and a support that goes through here for the front bumper. But I don't think there's much this close. There is the air tank for the headlights, the vacuum reservoir for the headlights. So put the car back down and see what we can accomplish up top. Well, 1 out of 2 isn't bad. I got the one that I was working on with the green tape through. That looks pretty good. But the other one went up a different hole, so I'm going to have to put it back up and try again. So I got the hose through. Unfortunately, after cutting it off where I had to cut it off, there's not a whole lot of hose sticking through, so it would be very difficult to work with this right down in here. Let's see if I can point it out to you right here. And I'm looking at this, I have it routed around the dryer. I think I'm going to take it out and try to route it above the dryer. I think that will give me some extra room to work. So that was much easier said than done. But there's the second hose. Now for the most important part of this. Put the hose clamps on before you connect the hoses. That's for myself. Nothing more frustrating than connecting a hose and then realizing I don't have a clamp on it. So The first thing we're going to do is we're going to address the return line, because that's right here and I can get it out of the way. So that's the one where I bought a special 3/8 fitting to make it fit this 13/16 hose. And now I know I'm going to struggle pushing it on, because it was a struggle to get the hoses on the actual cooler unit. I need to lubricate that with something to make it go in easier. Why in the heck they don't give you a little bit of extra hose and give you the right sizes is beyond me. It's really, really, really frustrating. Try this again. Put a little bit of simple green on that fitting that's going into the hose. Okay, check to make sure my hose clamp hasn't fallen off of there. This is why I didn't want to be fighting with that with very little room to work, because I knew it was going to be a bear. I think I'm going to have to grab that hose with some vice grips or something to better be able to push it on. And I left my vice grips up at the garage. I used them the other day up there for something. This could all be easier if they'd have given me hose that actually fit. If you've been watching along with this series, you know that I don't often get frustrated. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's over the first and second bar, but it needs to go on further. I'll just have to find, I know I left excess room so that I could grab this. I'll just have to find a place to push it. You know, maybe make a loop under the nose of the car there in front of the radiator. That's one of my options. Or a loop somewhere between here and the transmission. Maybe just pull it back some at the transmission, leave more of a loop back there. Well, I'm not going to make you suffer through watching me struggle with this for a while. I'll just work at it till I get it. That's all you can do at this point. And I'm kicking myself for not just going and buying some 3/8 hose. After fighting with that thing for, I don't know, another 10 or 15 minutes, I couldn't get it to go any further. So it's on the second barb on the fitting, and I put the clamp right over the second barb. So I'm hoping that that's satisfactory. Now on the other one, one of the issues I had with that one was I put the hose clamp on and it slid down all by itself, down under the hole in the radiator support, and I had a hard time getting it back out, even though it went down there all by itself. So on this one, I tightened up the clamp a little bit on the hose so that it can't slide down while I'm playing with it. Hopefully that'll give me something extra to grip with when I'm trying to put this fitting in there. I don't know. Time will tell. So I've already got the hose clamp on there. Triple check, the hose clamp is on there. I'll put some lubrication on this fitting. And hopefully it goes in better than the last one, but I'm not even hopeful. They say they want this on at least an inch. Well, that one is going on better, but I'm only fighting one barb. Okay, that's at least an inch. Now, is it in at an angle that I can get it in there? While I have some play in the hose, I'm going to move the hose clamp up and put it on where it belongs. That one went on relatively easy. I wonder if it was because I had the hose clamp on there, I could grip the hose better. So maybe what I will do is loosen up that hose clamp, move it down a little bit on the other one, see if that gives me a better grip for shoving it in. Now the question will be, how hard is it going to be to line this up? Get it threaded in. And I pretty much have to take gloves off to do that. I have one forget what they're called, but a rubber glove. Because the other one got all torn up on this. And that might be something to be concerned about now that I don't have a glove on my hand. I think that the work glove actually saved me from cutting my hand up quite a bit there. This is going to be just like it was the first time. It's hard to get it lined up and threaded without it binding on the actual shaft. That might have started. I'd like to turn it a little bit more by hand. Yeah, it's going a little bit. Turn it by hand so to make sure I'm not cross-threading it. And then make sure I don't have a very big bend in the hose. That looks good. 1/2-inch flare nut wrench. I still need to figure out what I'm going to do for the fitting into the inlet on the bottom of the radiator. It should be a little easier. I think I'm going to need some 5/16 hose. And a 5/16 fitting there. And it should be good. It's a flare nut fitting. It should be tight enough. Any leakage should be minor and should be able to be taken care of by just simply tightening it up a little bit. So I am going to try moving this down. I'm going to do it off camera. Try to move that down, see if that hose clamp tightened up against the hose will give me a little bit better grip on it to shove it in, because that other one went in pretty darn easy. So after struggling with that for another 5 or 10 minutes, I got it maybe a 1/16 of an inch further on. I think it's going to be fine because it's so tight I can't see it leaking. But if it does leak, I guarantee you that the fix will be to go buy a length of 3/8 hose that's long enough to do that return. And if there's a leak in the other hose that I can't get, you know, the input to the transmission cooler, if there's a leak in that I can't get resolved, that's going to be the fix there too. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now the other end, and you can kind of see the hose because I've got it routed up top. I didn't know which one was which when I pulled it out. That's the one that goes to the bottom of the radiator. That's the inlet. This is a 5/16 inch barb. So I'm going to have to find some kind of a fitting that goes into the radiator. And I can't find the old one that I took off, and I know I took the radiator to the junkyard so to get it recycled. And so I don't know, I don't think I have that one laying around here, but I'd need a piece of 5/16 hose anyways to go from this barb to that one, which hopefully is 5/16. If it's not, I don't know what I guess I do have a small section of 3/8 hose here that's brand new. The one that I used to test the length. I guess I could use that on that one, but I've been here 4 hours and I got one hose routed, one partially routed, and 2 connections made to the cooler. So much for your half-hour install time. Thanks for watching.